For more, we are joined by Mi-sun Kim. She is an associate professor of Department of Political Science at University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. Thank you very much for joining us, Professor. Firstly, I want to get your reaction to President Yoon's address. Do you think it'll sway the doctors to return to work or further escalate the dispute?
So far, Yoon Suk-yeol's address, as doctors claimed, he didn't change a lot of his agenda. He stands firm on his agenda, and his leadership style is known to push through his policy initiatives despite strong objections and going toe-to-toe with his opponents. And so this is not the first time that he faces strong objections, but he still is unwilling to make compromises. So if the government does not show any more significant gesture to doctors, I don't think that the current administration will make a breakthrough.
Professor Kim, to pick up on your point about how the president's personality is, he also made the claim that doctors are part of a cartel with no plan that's better than his own quota plan. So not very helpful. But, I mean, is his characterization to be totally objective of the doctor community as a cartel have any merit at all?
I think President Yoon's leadership style and his narrative and his political rhetoric are known to be, known to have some characteristics that characterize populist leaders. So his comment that, doctors are like running cartel does not really surprise a lot of people, because that is the rhetoric that he used to make against, for example, opposition party leaders and his political oppositions, saying that all these oppositions, they oppose my proposal is because they are not loyal to our country's main agenda, our democratic value. So this is not the first time. But however, I don't think it is fair to describe doctors as running cartel, a little bit of exaggerating. But as I said, this rhetoric style is characteristic of populist leaders, characterizing the public and dividing the public into two, us versus them, and trying to make and characterize the political opposition, in this case, doctors, as our common enemy, because that is the strategy these populist leaders to use so that they can more easily garner public support.
Speaking of public support, Professor, next week, of course, South Korea will hold legislative elections. Stakes are high. How much of Mr. Yoon's refusal to back down will influence the outcome?
So at the beginning of this debate and confrontation, actually, the vast majority of the South Korean population actually agreed with the president, and they did not understand the refusal of doctors to agree to the government proposal to increase medical school admissions, because we see that the South Korean society is aging so quickly, and also the inequality of health access between regions. Primarily between the Seoul capital area and the rural areas is huge, and it's becoming a huge issue. So people understand and generally agree with the government proposal in principle, right? And still, lots of opinion polls show that people still agree with the government proposal, over 85% or 90% of them. However, as the situation drags on, many people, even though they agree, but still many people are increasingly fed up with the current situation, this confrontation between the government and doctors. And people begin to blame the government and President Yoon's leadership style, a lack of effective communications, and lack of willingness to compromise sometimes, and his unilateral leadership style. And people begin to blame that as well. So as the situation continues, I don't think it benefits any party. His own party, People Power Party, and it doesn't help doctors either. So how much that would affect the elections?
Sorry to interrupt. I just want to quickly ask you. So with that in mind, 8 days, April 10th is the actual day of the polls. Is a last-minute deal possible? Because I'm sure the president is aware of perhaps shifting sentiment as well.
Yeah, I think so. It all depends on how he appears to approach to this issue. So, for example, his public address yesterday, I think it helped a little bit, right? Because he expressed his willingness, the government's willingness to talks with doctors. And the government is willing to be more flexible if there are any possible and better alternatives brought by doctors. So I think he showed a little bit of change in his tone and his plan about how to push through the situation. So if he more effectively goes public, in other words, persuading the population, the public, and leverage the public opinion a little bit more strategically, because, as I said, the vast majority of the population agrees with the government proposal. So if he shows a little bit of this going public strategy more effectively and showing more openness to talks and, making compromises if necessary, then I think it will change the public sentiment very effectively. And so maybe more positively affect the electoral results next week.
And Professor, but if the current reform plan proves unattainable, what alternative measures could the government take to address the healthcare needs of its aging population?
So actually, it is not very surprising that doctors and the Korean Medical Association objecting to these medical reforms, because actually this was not the first time for the Korean government to propose reforms like this. Actually, the previous administration, the Moon Jae-in administration, also proposed this similar agenda. However, in the face of strong objection from doctors, they gave up. So if this time it does not really get resolved, the situation does not get resolved easily, probably, this same situation will be likely continue. However, given the Yoon Suk-yeol administration's leadership style and communication style, I think this will create a huge political opportunity for the government, because now it clearly shows that it is the doctors who do not want to open up, and they want the status quo despite what, no matter what. So I think even though the government cannot resolve this situation effectively in the short run, but still in the long run, I think it can create positive political opportunity for the government to push medical reforms in the long run.
Understood. Professor Kim, we will have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time today. Mi-sun Kim is Associate Professor at the Department of Political Science at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley.